a function of same PRTR. Then there was one more chart of delta S star as a function of PRTR. There were two charts. One was delta H star. Rather, for each one there are two charts. One was in terms of Z0, the other was in terms of Z1. Then delta H star 0, delta H star 1, delta S star 0, delta S star 1. And then there were charts of phi as a function of PRTR. What all these charts are available in any standard thermodynamics textbook. You consult YVC Rao, you consult anything, these charts are available. Even in my lectures, these charts are there, you can take it. So I don't think I'm going to upload them anymore in the within the files assignment. Okay, you can take it from any particular standard textbook that you have. You can also take it from the lectures. Other than these charts, you do not need any more charts for the class for the time being. You just need charts of Z0, Z1, delta H star 0, delta H star 1, delta S star 0, delta S star 1, phi 0 and phi 1. And for most of the cases, you will be dealing with Z0, delta H star 0, the two parameter law of corresponding states. The three parameter mostly we use in actual situations, but for the time being in the class, we will not be going. For some cases we may use, otherwise we will not use.
Okay,
Is
ma'am.
it clear to you? Okay, and the other charts, see, you have to refer to some textbook, and also in my lectures, in my slides, they are there. From there, you can simply download, because you will be requiring the charts for maybe for tomorrow also you might require, and after that also you might require, right? So therefore, you will be requiring the charts. So therefore it's good that you download the charts and to keep it for yourself. Okay, all the charts are more or less the same, so you are going to get more or less the same things. Well, anything else? Anything else? Any other doubts? So yeah, anything please?
No, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So my whiteboard is visible to you, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Acha, so see, from the beginning of thermodynamics, the way we had started, it was first thing which we started was when Professor Kaushal started. If you find out, this was primarily we had single phase, single component system. So therefore, what did we first do? We first started to find out the change in properties, right? And why were the properties changing? The properties were changing just because there were different energy interactions between the system and the surroundings. So therefore, based on the different interactions, from the first law of thermodynamics, what we found out was, we found out the change in internal energy depending upon the changes in heat and work interactions between the system and surroundings. Then from the second law, what we did, we first tried to relate U with say the first thing which we did was, from the second law was, the first thing which you knew was this, and then for an isolated system we found that this greater than equal to 0, this is the criteria of spontaneity. And after that, from the second law and the first law combined, we came across a series of equations which were relating the energy interactions with the change in properties. Our main concern were two for thermodynamics. First thing, whenever there is any particular say any particular interactions between the system and surroundings, for the time being, if we consider closed systems, then in that case the interaction between system and surroundings is just by your heat or work. There is no other interactions. In that case, what are the properties that it can change, in what way it can change? So based on the interactions, we had come across a set of four equations which were TdS minus PdV. dH was TDS plus VDP, then it was dA equals minus SDT minus PDV, then DG was minus SDT minus, sorry, this was plus VDP and this was minus PD, sorry, plus VDP. Perfect. Yeah. So therefore, these were the four equations that we got, and then what we did, from this set of four equations, we arrived at the Maxwell's equations. And then from the Maxwell's equation, we found that based on the changes in the measurable properties, that means we can measure the change when a system goes from T1 to T2, when it goes from P1 to P2, right? Now, once we can measure the changes, then based on this, we can find out the changes in the non-measurable properties. And we had selected two particular non-measurable properties. The first one was delta H, because this gives you the energy change when there is an energy interaction and also when there is a flow work or a pressure volume work associated with it. Okay. And the other thing was delta S, because as we have found out that the change in delta S, that gives you whether the process is feasible, how much it is feasible, and whether the process after the change has come to an equilibrium state or not. So therefore, it was felt that these two properties are the most important properties, and therefore, how to relate these two properties with the changes in the measurable properties. So therefore, what happens? A system is interacting with the surroundings. There is some amount of energy interactions between the system and surroundings. Due to this, there are some property changes in the system. How do we measure the property changes? We can measure only those particular property changes which are measurable. The most easily measured properties are temperature and pressure. Volume can also be measured, but it is not so very accurate. Therefore, we measure temperature and pressure. We find out the changes. Based on that, we can find out changes in all other properties. The changes in delta H, delta S was discussed. Based on this, we can find out the changes in delta U, delta A, delta G, sorry, delta A, delta G, and all other properties, we can find it out, right? So these things that we were discussing, they were primarily for pure components. Now, among the pure components, what you can have pure gases, you can have liquids, you can have solids. Liquids and solids, they are usually known as condensed phases, and the gas, we usually refer to them as gases. Now, for these pure gases, we found out that finding out all this set of properties, a very easy way it is there, just by referring to the change of properties with respect to the property changes which would have happened had the gas been ideal, right? What were these property changes called? Can you tell me? The property changes which happen with respect to the property change which would have happened had the gas been ideal. Can you tell me what were these property changes called? Yes,
Departure.
and yeah, perfect. So therefore, we found that for pure gases, in order to find out the property changes, it is very easy if we can refer to the residual properties or to the departure functions. Now, why was it so very easy? Because finding out the property changes for an ideal gas was very easy. Now, when finding out the property changes for the ideal gases were very easy, so therefore it was felt that if we can just refer to the property changes, any particular property change with respect to the ideal gas, and then suppose we have to go from state 1 to state 2, then in that case, if we can find out delta H0 from state 1 to state 2, or in other words, H02 minus H01, finding out this is very easy, because in this case we find if there's a temperature change, the enthalpy does not change, it simply changes with the pressure changes. Okay, and then what we do, we simply find out H2 minus H20, which is nothing but delta H star 2. We find out H1 minus H10, which is delta H1 star, and then from there we find out, if we know this, if we know this, then we are in a position to find out this minus this. So this was a standard thing which was done for pure gases, right? And this is usually practiced for pure gases because we find that the departure functions are not high. We do not do it for condensed phases, and anyhow for condensed phases the properties, they do not change much with pressure, and they do not change much also with pressure. Now the next thing came, that see, just dealing with systems which are pure gases, that is almost an extremely ideal sort of a situations. So there are two things that we have. One is, instead of pure gases, we deal with gaseous mixtures. The other thing is, we not only deal with gaseous mixtures, we also deal with any system which are in different phases, right? So therefore we have to broaden up whatever we have studied to more and more unknown areas to find out properties under different varied situations. So suppose I take up the first situation. I have got a pure gas, and that particular pure gas, that is in equilibrium with, say, its pure liquid counterpart. Okay, so therefore pure gas in equilibrium, see, the first thing is that they need not be in equilibrium, but when two systems are brought together and left to themselves without anything, finally everybody wants to finally attain a state of equilibrium, and therefore whenever they are left to themselves, any particular system, with no matter how different the properties of the components of the system are, when they are brought together and left to themselves, then in that case finally they reach a state of equilibrium. So therefore, suppose we consider this particular gas which we are dealing, a real gas, and then it is brought in contact with its liquid, right? And it is left to itself. Then in that case, what happens? There'll be some particular mass transfer from the liquid to the gas. There'll be some amount of mass transfer from the gas to the, sorry, it's a reverse, from the gas to the liquid, from the liquid to the gas. When we find that the whole thing is in a state of equilibrium, please do not think that the mass transfer has stopped. The point is that when the two states are in equilibrium, then the rate of forward mass transfer is equal to the rate of backward mass transfer, right? So therefore we find that if we consider each system individually, then they become homogeneous open systems. And then we found that whatever we had, say if we had dg equals to minus s dt plus v dp, along with that what we need, we will have 1 mu dn. So for the gas phase, if we consider, then definitely this is going to be the gas, this is going to be the gas phase. Always denote the phase with the superscript, the component with the subscript. If you follow this, then you are going to have lesser problems. Same thing from the liquid phase. If we consider, it is djl equals to, again, that's just the same thing written for the liquid phase. This is sorry, this is G and this is L, right? So therefore we find that we can write this out, and we had already defined that under equilibrium what happens, the dg for the total closed system, that has to be equal to 0, right? That means this plus this has to be equal to 0, or in other words, this has to be equal to this under equilibrium conditions. Based on that, what did we find out? We found out that if temperatures and pressures are constant, then in that case the mu of that component in the gas phase has to be mu of that component in the liquid phase under equilibrium conditions. So that was the next thing that we defined. It's not only for gas and liquid, it can be if there are pi number of phases in equilibrium, then in that case, this can be defined for the total pi number of phases. Now, for one phase in equilibrium from this particular equation, we had come across, or rather we had derived the Clapeyron equation, the Clausius-Clapeyron equation. The importance of these equations are they help us in defining the slopes of the PT curves. Right, that was important. Now, when we go for a mixture, then naturally the situation becomes much more complex. Now, instead of this pure gas, suppose in this particular case, I have got a real gas mixture. Right now, for a real gas mixture, whatever I have told you earlier, every single thing is applicable. All these equations, everything is applicable. The only problem is that whenever you are going for the mixtures, then in that case, what do you have? For pure gases, you have got, if it is a real gas, you have V equals to ZRT by P. Right? When you have a mixture, what do you have? Naturally, it's going to be the molar volume of that particular mixture. Now, this will naturally be equal to ZmRT by P. Okay, we are talking only of gases. Am I audible? And if everything clear, anywhere, any doubts, you can stop me and you can ask me. Till this much, I understand everything is fine and clear to you. Come on. Any response?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. It's clear.
Perfect. Okay. You just tell me, otherwise not able to understand. Okay, fine. So therefore, this was one of the doubts. So therefore, the only thing is that when you are dealing with mixtures, then in that case, to find out the molar volume, in that case, you need to have some way to estimate your the mixture compressibility factor for that particular mixture. Now there are different particular ways. Now remember one thing, for every particular thing we resort to the ideal gas equation for every particular thing. So suppose we have for mixture of ideal gases. From your school days, you know that mixture of ideal gases, they obey two laws. Can you tell me the two laws which the mixture of ideal gases obey? Come on.
Dalton law of partial pressure.
Hey, one voice I am hearing repeatedly. Other voices, I would like to hear other voices. I've taken out the roll list now, but I do not want to call. Other voices, please. These are very simple questions.
Amagat's law of additive volume
Perfect, perfect, perfect,
and partial pressure. I forgot the law.
perfect, perfect,
Dalton.
perfect. Can you tell me what this Amagat's law of additive volume tells you?
Ma'am, at constant same pressure and temperature,
Perfect.
Vm is equal to sigma NiVi.
Perfect. So therefore, Vm equals to sigma Ni small vi, where this Vi and Vm are measured at the same temperature and pressure, isn't it? So therefore, what it implies basically is that when the different ideal gases they mix together, then they mix without any change in volume, or in other words, the behavior of the gases when they are in the pure state and the behavior when they are mixed, they are completely identical, and that is quite expected, because for ideal gases we assume that the volume of the molecules are negligible compared to the volume of the entire gas, and the interactions between the molecules, that is also neglected. So now if we come to the real gas mixture, what do we get? For the real gas mixture in that particular case, we know that just we have seen that this Vm equals to Zm RT by P. Okay. Now, if we assume that even for real gases, they interact without any change in volume, or in other words, the gases are real, but the mixture formed is an ideal, ideal mixture means something which changes without, rather which forms without any change of the individual properties. Then in that case we can always write this down as that PVM, this is equal to ZMRT. We can always write this out, or in other words, just the way you have said that this particular VM, it is equal, nothing but equal to Ni by N Vi, or in other words, this is equal to Yivi. So therefore, instead of this particular Vm, I can just write it down as sigma Yivi. This is equal to Zmrt. For each particular Vi, I can put it as P, sorry, this Vi, this is equals to RT by P. If anything, I'm hearing some sound. Is there any problem? Well, fine. So therefore, in this particular case, what do we get? We for this particular case, we find, if you substitute this here, then we get Zm equals to sigma Yizi, where Zm is nothing but equal to PVM by RT. Zi is equals to PVI by RT, and this particular P and this particular P are the same, and again this particular T and this particular T are the same. Am I clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Anybody who had doubts? So therefore, this is the relationship that I get when I assume between Zm and Zi, when I assume Amagat's law of your additive volumes. So what I have to basically do in this particular equation, I need to find out Zm. In order to find out Zm, I use this equation. I just need to know the composition and the individual Zi's. This particular individual Zi's, they can be found out from this particular graph, or they can also be found out from the any particular equations of state. Once I know the compositions and this, I can find out Zm. Once I can find out Zm, I can substitute it here and I can find out the Vm. Once I can find out the Vm, I can go to find out all other properties like H mixture, S mixture, in fact fugacity mixture. I can find out everything. Now, instead of the Amagat's law of additive volume, suppose I assume that my gas obeys the Dalton's law of partial pressure. Now, what is the Dalton's law of partial pressure? It simply tells you that the total pressure is what? Can you tell me the Dalton's law of partial pressure?
Total pressure is sum of partial pressure, and partial pressure is mole fraction time total pressure.
Nah. This is here. I'll just tell you. See, there cannot be. See, one thing, remember, pressure is an intensive property. So temperature and pressure, they do not exhibit this additive property of extensive properties. Right. So therefore, the actual thing in this way, the better way to write it is a summation of the partial pressures. What is this partial pressure? Partial pressure is the pressure which the gas exerts when it is in the mixture. As per, this is always true. As per Dalton's law of partial pressure, this is the total pressure is the summation of partial pressures, and for each component, the partial pressure is equal to the pure component pressure. What is the pure component pressure? If this particular component I in this particular volume, there are gases, say 1, 2, 3, maybe 3 gases are there. Suppose only gas 1 was there, it had occupied the entire volume, then the pressure which it would have exerted, that is known as Pi. So therefore, Pi basically this is equals to Zi RT by total V volume. Right. Similarly, not pi, this is equal, say this is pi, fine. This is true for each and every pi when I equals to 1 2 3, 1 2 or 3. So therefore what we assume is that if the gas would have been alone, then the volume which, sorry, then the pressure which it would have occupied when it was occupying this entire volume V, that is equal to the pure component pressure. We assume that when the gases are mixed, then also all the individual gases, they occupy the total volume. But since the gases are interacting, the pressure which the individual gases would exert, that would not be equal to the pure component pressure. Under real circumstances, Dalton's law assumes that the partial pressure and the pure component pressures, they are the same. This is what Dalton assumes. Okay, am I clear to all of you? So therefore, for in this particular case, then what do we have? The Zm, what is Zm? This is equals to PV by nRT. Mind it, this is the capital V that I have written. Can we write it down as yes or no? I can write it down as this. Actually, I should write it down as partial pressure, and then for Dalton's law, I should write it down as pure component pressure. Is this part clear to all of you? Come on.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Perfect. So therefore, now this can I write it down as, just see what I'm doing. I'm simply multiplying on the top and the bottom by Ni. Then in that case, what do I get? I get sigma Ni by N Pi V by Ni RT. Fine. Then in that case, you tell me what is this part? What is this part? Can you tell me? This is also, yes, please. What is this part? PIV by NIRT.
ZI.
ZI, but is it the same definition as this ZI? Wait. Let me bring both of them together. See, this ZI, is this evident which we had derived from Amagat's law of additive volume? Can you see this ZI? Come on, yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
And both are different.
One
Both are
minute.
Both are different.
What happened?
Both are different.
See, both are Zs. Okay, but they are different Zs. One Z was defined at the pressure and temperature of the mixture. The other Z was defined at the temperature of the mixture, but at the pure component pressure. Right. But in this case also, you can write down, if you see this equation, you can write down this particular equation as Zm equals to Yi Zi prime. For this Zi, it is a function of T and Pi. We can also write it down as Yi Zi, whereas for this Zi is a function of T and P. Am I clear to you? So therefore, you can define the mixture compressibility factor either from Amagat's law of additive volumes, for which for both the cases you have the same equation. It is the mole fraction times the component compressibility factor. The only difference between defining compressibility factor in terms of Amagat's law of additive volumes and Dalton's law of partial pressure is that for Amagat's law, we define Zi at the temperature and pressure of the mixture. For Dalton's law, we define Zi prime at the temperature of the mixture, but the pure component pressure. So this concept is clear to you, I believe. Now, apart from that, there are other ways also by which you can find out Zm. So those things we have already discussed. We can find out Zm and also Vm. You know, We can find it out from the cubic equation of state. We can also find it out from the virial equation of state, and or else we can also find it out from the compressibility factor chart. That also we can do. Now when we have to find it out from cubic equation or virial equation, what do we have? We need some mixing rules and some combining rules. Why do we need them? To express the constants of the equation in terms of the single component constants. So therefore we have mixing rules which define the constants of the equation. If it is a van der Waals equation, then it expresses am as a function of ai's yi's and bm as a function of bi yi. And whenever we are going to do this, we find that in the expression of am we will be having aii, which decides the interaction between molecules of I. We will have ajj, which decides the interactions between molecules of j. We also have something like aij, which defines interactions between molecules of I and molecules of j. Right. Now in order to find this out, again in terms of aii and ajj, we need some sort of combining rules. Mostly the combining rules that we have discussed, what they do, they define this interaction parameter either as an arithmetic mean or as an geometric mean of the interactions between the individual parameters. So therefore combining rules are rules which decide the interaction parameters in terms of pure component constants. Mixing rules are rules which decide the constants, the actual gas constants in terms of the pure component constants. And this, the way I have defined it for van der Waals, same rules apply for Redlich Kwong Peng Robinson. Also an identical set of rules are exists for the constants of the virial equations of states. And when we have to use the compressibility factor chart, then again we have to find out Z. This Z has to be found out in terms of PR and TR. So when it is a mixture, we want to find out Z mixture, we need PRM and TRM. This TRM is nothing but T by the critical constant of the mixture. So it is, so therefore, to find out TRM, we need TCM. To find out PRM, we need PCM. We have already discussed the the mixing rules for TCM and also for PCM. PCM, it can be defined in terms of this. These two laws are known as the case rule, which I have already discussed. You can go through the video and see in a better way. Instead of a case rule, for case rule is fine for TCM, but PCM, just by this it is not very accurate. So therefore I had discussed a Pruchnitz-Gunn rule which decides PCM as sigma yi. For each PCI, if you remember, it is in terms of ZCI RTCI by VCI sigma I equals to 1 to n. In this particular way, it was defined, and PCM is defined by this particular way, right? So therefore, what you have to do, you have to find out PCM using this, find out PRM as P by PCM, find out TCM using this, find out TRM as a function of T by TCM, then find out ZM, and then also you can find out the rules. So this was for the gas cases. Now if we come for the liquids. Now for the liquids, what did we find? That liquids, it is very difficult unless under specific situations to define the liquid mixture in terms of Amagat's law of additive volume, etc. So for liquid mixtures, what did we find? I'll come back again to this particular picture. This real gas mixture and in equilibrium with the liquid mixture, right? For real gas mixture, as I've told you, we know how to find out. For liquid mixtures, for most of the cases, we cannot write the Vm, this is equal to NiVi. Rather, we find that the molar volume of say any particular component, the molar volume, it is not the same in different components. What I mean to say is, if we have say a water ethanol mixture, okay, now in that water ethanol mixture, say I've got a 1 liter mixture of water and ethanol now, and I've got 1 liter water. So in 1 liter water, if I add say 1 mole water, I find that the volume increases by 18 cc. If in 1 liter ethanol, I add 1 mole water, I find that the volume increases by say 14 cc. I don't remember, it's more or less that. Okay. And suppose I have got maybe say 1 liter ethanol water mixture, say for example, and maybe it is 50-50 ethanol water mixture. There maybe I'll find out that the volume increase is something, say it can be 15.5 cc or something of that sort when I add 1 mole of water. So therefore we found out that the volume increase, or for that matter any property increase in the liquid mixture, we find out that this is not additive as in the case of gases. So therefore we find out for any particular property, say M, for in a liquid mixture, we cannot write this down as Xi. Remember, moment I've come to the liquid, I've started using X. X is the mole fraction in the liquid phase and Y is the mole fraction in the vapor phase. Remember this, right? If you are following this meticulously, you should not have any problems. So therefore this is Xi, this is not equal to Xi Mi. Rather we find that this is equal to sigma Xi Mi bar, where Mi bar is known as a partial molar property. Now, this again adds to the list of properties that you have. Okay, we already had initially we started with total properties. Say any property M. Then for what we did, we had molar properties. Then for gases, what do we have? We had residual properties. Now for liquid mixtures, what do we have? We have a partial molar property. Right. So you find out that for extensive properties, for each extensive properties, there are a large number of corresponding intensive properties that we can define. Okay. When it is a pure substance, we define a molar property. When it is in a solution, we define a partial molar property. So therefore, in that case, we find that for any property, we find that the additive rule is applicable for partial molar property and not for the molar property. And as I have told you, what is the partial molar property? Partial molar property is the increase in the property when 1 mole of the component is added and all other components are kept as it is. Or in other words, we define Mi. These things are just revision. You have already come across all these things. We define this as del M. N is the number of moles of component M which is added For that, what is the contribution at constant Tp Nj not equal to I? Right? So what I mean to say is I add 1 mole of component I to the total property under constant temperature and pressure, and the total number of other moles to be constant. Now, since the way I had already told you about the ethanol water mixture, it's very evident to you that I cannot find it. So it's very evident that when we are adding the property, the increase in the total property, that depends upon the composition. For example, suppose just the way I was telling, the total volume of a say water ethanol mixture, right? So therefore, if I start with 0, say this is XC2H5OH. So it varies from 0 to 1. Now, when it is 0, I find that when I add one particular mole, the change in the volume, that is 18 cc. But when I add the same 1 mole for in pure ethanol, the change is just 14 cc. Here it is 18 cc. So therefore, for any other intermediate composition, the change in property by adding 1 mole of water into a ethanol water mixture, that is going to vary. The variation is something of this sort. It is not even a straight line or any variation. The variation is extremely erratic. In the other way, suppose in this particular case, I add 1 mole of ethanol, again I'll find the variation to be something erratic, right? So therefore, the the contribution of the molar property, that also depends upon the composition of the mixture. So therefore, if you find even for volume, if I plot it as N say C2H5OH, I find maybe this is going to be something of this sort. Okay, so therefore, depending upon the composition, the total volume changes. Now for, sorry, this is X. Now for any particular composition, for do I find the molar property, partial molar property is given by this, which signifies that the tangent to the curve at that particular composition, that gives you the partial molar property for that composition. Now it is very clear that the tangent, this is going to be different. The slope of the tangent is going to be different depending upon the composition of the mixture, which automatically implies that the partial molar property does not, it is not a constant characteristic of any component or of the component pair. It also depends upon the composition of the mixture, right? So therefore, partial molar properties are not very easy to deal. The straightforward way of finding it out is that if you can plot the total volume as a function of total number of moles, and if you can get something of this sort, and then if you can, for each particular composition, if you can find out tangents, then from these particular tangents you can find out the partial molar property for different number of moles that has been added. This is not a very easy method, and it's a very cumbersome thing. So generally, to find out partial molar properties, there is a much easier technique, a geometrical technique, of course, which is known as the method of intercepts. After the class, either today or tomorrow, we'll be running the second video, which is already uploaded for you. In that particular video, I believe the method of intercepts will be discussed. You go through it and come back to me in case you have any doubts. This is just a geometric technique, a very simple technique to find out the partial molar property for any particular composition. Well, with this, what are the things that we have discussed? First thing that we have discussed is that we have a pure component. It can be a gas, it can be a liquid. Next, two components, pure component, two phases in equilibrium, right? That also we have discussed. Next, we have moved to mixtures. We have a gas mixture. Simplest, what is the simplest case? For the time being, we can consider a binary mixture. we can have something more than that. Same equations for binary are going to be applicable. And we have a liquid mixture. For the gas mixture, how to find out the properties we have discussed. For the liquid mixture, how to find out the properties that we have discussed. Now for the total particular system where the gas mixture and the liquid mixture, they are in a closed system. That means this particular system does not interact with the surrounding. For this particular system, what will be the properties, how to discuss this, that we'll be discussing after this. The concepts of fugacity, etc., everything emanates from this particular part. So do I take a break of just 5 minutes and then continue, or do I continue and finish off?
A break, ma'am. A break will be fine.
Fine. A break, and then we come back and then we discuss fugacity, etc. So it is 12:12 in my computer watch now. We'll be meeting exactly at 12:18 of my watch. Is that right? You can take a break and we come back at 12:18 exactly.
Okay, ma'am.
Fine. So I understand all of you are back.
Hello,
Can
ma'am.
I start the class? Come on.
Yes, ma'am.
Shashank.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
perfect. So I start once more. That's it. Whatever has been done till now, till that much, anybody, any doubts, anything? Yeah. So therefore, oh, this is creating a problem every time. Wait.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Ma'am, I uploaded assignment 1 solutions in file section. Students, please look into.
Okay, fine. They'll do it after the class. Okay. Very good. But it was only delta H star, I believe. Fugacity was not uploaded, I think, isn't it? Pallavi?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So fugacity part also, students, I think it should not be difficult. In the same way you are going to proceed, and we'll give you additional problems on fugacity after this. But please see that the same way you have to do for the fugacity part, and that is included in tomorrow's test. Okay. Well, so now if we come to say mixtures. Now in this particular mixture system, that whatever we had done for a pure component, the same thing is applicable. What is it? dgTp equal to 0. In the same way, DATV equals to 0, blah, blah, everything at equilibrium. The same thing is applicable in this case. And from here, if you remember, we had defined that instead of using some particular extensive variables, we wanted to express equilibrium in terms of intensive variables, because mechanical equilibrium and thermal equilibrium, they are defined in terms of temperature and pressure, which are intensive variables. So we felt that chemical equilibrium should also be defined in terms of some particular intensive variables. And accordingly, if you remember, we have redefined this in terms of mu1, mu2, and this goes on. In fact, I did not write it down correctly. All these things, they should have been superscripts, because they refer to phases and not to components. This is just for a single component. If there are multiple components, then we have a subscript for the multiple components. And from there we found that instead of dgTp equals to 0, equilibrium can also be defined as sigma mu I equals to 0, or in other words, which implies that mu of any component in the different phases should be equal. So if it is a single component system, then we simply write mu in phase 1 equals to mu in phase 2 equals to mu in phase pi. Normally we deal with 2-phase or at max 3 phases in equilibrium in thermodynamics. If it is more than one, suppose there are 2 components, then for component 1 we write this. Again the same thing we write down for component 2. Right? So this shows that for component 1, in different phases, chemical potential is same. Again, for component 2, different phases, chemical potential, it is the same. Right? And we also found out that when we are dealing with different phases, then we found that for each particular phase, there is a Gibbs-Duhem equation. Remember certain things. The Gibbs phase rule is applicable for the entire system in equilibrium. Among that particular system, there can be pi number of phases. For each particular phase comprising of one or more than one components, there is a Gibbs-Duhem equation. So for this particular system, Gibbs-Duhem equation is there for the gaseous phase. A Gibbs-Duhem equation is applicable for the liquid phase. Am I correct? Is this clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Suppose now I tell you that in this particular mixture, it's just little more difficult. It becomes a ternary mixture. That means we have components 1, 2, 3. Here also we have got, I make it a bigger, components 1, 2 and 3. Right. Now can you tell me that if we consider just the gas phase, how many properties are there? How many properties? What are the properties that you require to completely define just the gaseous mixture? Can you tell me? Let us start with the properties that you need. If you can tell me. Come on. Come on. What are the properties that you need to define the gas phase?
Pressure, volume, temperature.
You need temperature, definitely. See, if you know temperature and volume, sorry, pressure, you can find out volume, isn't it? What you need is you need temperature of the gas phase. You need the pressure of the gas phase. You also need the composition of the gas phase, which is in other words, X1 in the gas phase, X2 in the gas phase, X3 in the gas phase. Right? You need these many number of properties to completely define the gas phase. But out of this, there is a Gibbs-Duhem equation which connects, due to which if you know 1, 2, 3, 4 of this, the fifth property can be found out. Right? So therefore, actually you need 5 properties, but since there's a Gibbs-Duhem equation, you can find out the fifth property in terms of the 4 other properties. For the liquid phase also it is same. You need temperature liquid, pressure liquid. I'm just assuming 2 phases separately. Okay, I have not combined them and not considered equilibrium. You need the composition of component 1, composition of component 2 and composition of component 3. It will be better if you also take down some notes. Then in that case your practice of writing these things are going to improve, right? So therefore in total you need 10 number of properties, out of which there is one Gibbs-Duhem equation by which you can find out the fifth property in the gas phase. There's also a Gibbs-Duhem equation here. This is Gibbs-Duhem for the gas phase. These are not any powers, mind it. They are just show the phase. And there will be also another Gibbs-Duhem equation for the liquid phase. So accordingly, what do we find? Out of the total 10 properties that you require, since there are 2 Gibbs-Duhem equations, so therefore you need just 8 properties. Now, when you consider the whole thing together, when you consider the whole thing together, what do you know? You know there is one equation which says that the two temperatures have to be equal. There is one equation which says that the two pressures have to be equal. There is one equation which says that the total number of moles of component 1 in this entire system, that has to be constant, because finally this system is a closed system. Similarly, it tells you, I'll just write down, there is one equation which tells you TL equals to TG. So if you know TL, you can find out TG. One other equation tells you PL equals to PG. So if you know PL, you can find out PG. The other one equation tells you X1 gas plus X1 liquid equals to set constant, or in other words, dx1 gas plus dx1 liquid equal to 0. So therefore, if you know x1, you can find out x1 gas, you can find out x1 liquid. In the same way, there is another equation which connects x2 gas and x2 liquid. There is another equation which connects x3 gas and x3 liquid. So in all, we find that out of this 8 total variables, there are 5 equations which are connecting these, right? 5 equations, because equality of temperature guarantees 1, equality of pressure guarantees 1, equality of each of the components, since it is a 3 component system, guarantees 3. So therefore, we find that out of the 8 equations that are there are 5 total constants. So therefore, finally it boils down to the total number of intensive variables. Mind it, the total number of intensive variables that can be varied in this particular system, a ternary two-phase system, is nothing but 3. And this is what is given by Gibbs phase rule, right? So therefore, if you find out from Gibbs phase rule also, you will find that for a ternary two-phase system, your Gibbs phase rule says that F equals to 3, right? Instead of x1, you could have also expressed this in terms of mu1g and mu1l. Then in that case, equality of the two would have given you one constant. Again, in this case, mu2g, mu2l equality would have given you another constant. In whatever way you can express it, but it has to be expressed only in terms of intensive variables. And we find that for this particular system, F gives 3. Now, if I generalize it, say for example, I tell that there are C number of components, I simply generalize it, and there are P number of phases, say, then in that case, again the same thing is the total number of independent variables will naturally be P into C plus 2. For each P phase, there are P number of Gibbs-Duhem equation. So therefore, that finally gives us P into C plus 1 total number of equations. And then in this particular way that we have seen, we can find out that for the pith phase, we can express the property in terms of pi minus 1th number of variables. So therefore, we find out of this gets reduced by pi minus 1 into n plus 2, which gives F equals to C minus P plus 2. This part was a doubt for some people. Is it clear? That's why I've taken up one particular case to explain. You can explain this either in terms of chemical potential or in composition, does not matter, since both of them are intensive variables, right? I've taken up an actual case to show you that how F, or rather how F conforms to the Gibbs phase rule, and then I have deduced the generalized case. Is this part clear to all of you? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
See, you have so many things to tell regarding assignment, weightage. It's more important, I think, if you I expect that you are understanding whatever is being discussed. Most of these are repetitions. I repeat because these things are slightly difficult. So I thought that it's better that you have a revision before I go to multiple phases and multiple components. So before going, I thought I'll take up one by one, clarify the whole thing. You have a test on it, and then we proceed ahead. Any place you don't understand, you simply stop me and tell me to explain once more. Now, once this whole thing, now you know that that in this in this particular situation, then you know that, well, when we are considering either the gas phase, it or either any particular phase, it is pure or it is a mixture. you can completely handle it. If you have a liquid phase, pure or a mixture, you can independently handle it. Just finding out partial molar properties has not been discussed. We'll be running a video on it so that you can understand it better, and that is going to complete your gaseous mixtures and liquid mixtures taken separately. Right. Now suppose we take both of them together. Again, while taking both of them together, again to make matters simple, what we do, suppose we take up a single component. We are repeatedly going to single component just because it is easier to understand. Once you understand single component, we will be going to, you can just extend the same to binary and to multiple components. We know that when these two are in equal, then the mu of the gas phase has to be equal to the mu of the liquid phase, right? So therefore, if you have to find out whether they are equal or not, you have to find out some way of calculating mu gas, some way of calculating mu liquid, and then you have to find out which one is greater. If mu gas is greater, then mass transfer goes in this direction. If mu liquid is greater, mass transfer goes in the opposite direction. This continues till the two mu's are the same. So therefore, there has to be some way of calculating the mu's. Now, what is the governing equation of finding out mu? Can you tell me? How can you express mu in terms of T and V? Anybody? It is a single component system. What is mu equals to for a single component system? Come on. What is mu equal to for a single component system?
Dou G by dou N at constant T and P.
1 minute. This is for a mixture. For a single component system, mu is just the partial molar Gibbs free energy. Isn't it? Fine. So therefore, this is nothing but equal to G. Fine. Can you tell me the defining equation of G? What is this?
Minus SDT plus VDP.
Perfect. Very good. Very good. So d mu also we can write down the same thing. Right? Now, this has also been discussed and the video has been run. This del mu del T at constant P, this we had expressed in terms of minus H by T square. So therefore, this can be replaced by minus H by T square. And in under that condition, if you know the change in enthalpy, you can find out mu. Right. Now, whenever you have to find out mu for any change in process, you know that we can break it into a series of isobaric isothermal processes. So for isobaric processes, the thing is not very difficult. Now let us take up the isothermal part where we want to find out mu when the pressure changes. Right. Now, there is one problem. See, we have to find out mu G, we have to find out mu L, and then we have to compare the two. Right. Now, whenever we are finding out d mu, this is equal to VDP. This is the equation that we have. Now, if we want to find out mu at some particular state, say we consider just the gas phase, okay, and the temperature here you can take it as, say, Tp. So therefore, you want to find out mu at Tp. What is this? How did this come into picture? Not even moving. Anyhow, leave it. So therefore, you have to calculate d mu. You know you need to calculate it at some particular temperature and pressure, right? And accordingly, here also you put that same temperature and pressure. Now, can you tell me what will be my lower limit here? Anybody, any idea? Can you tell me that what should I put the lower limit here? Upper limit, I know upper limit is the state where I wish to go, right? So what is the lower limit? This I am doing for the gas phase. Same type of equation I have to write down for the liquid phase also. And I know for the liquid phase also I have to find out I have to evaluate mu L at some particular temperature and pressure. This Tp and this Tp are the same because if they are same if it is in equilibrium. If it is not in equilibrium, then this is going to be TgPg, this is going to be TlPl. Sorry, this is TgPg, this is TlPl. Right? And then we have to evaluate, and then if we find that well the mu G and mu L are not equal, then in that case we have to decide what is going to be the mass transfer. Normally we assume that the thermal and the mechanical equilibrium is there, and for which we can assume Tg equals to Tl and Pg equals to Pl. If they are not equal, then we have to come up with additional equations. Well, now can you tell me, to find out mu G here in this particular case, I need to find out d mu G from some particular state where mu G value is known to the state of T and P or TG, PG, whatever it is, to this particular state, and accordingly the whatever lower limit I set here, same lower limit has to be set there. From here again I integrate it to TP. Can you tell me any way by which you can evaluate this lower limit? Any sort of thing, any guesswork, anything?
Ma'am, T comma 0. I mean, pressure is 0 and T same.
I agree. But tell me one thing, at pressure 0, what do you expect this is going to happen? This is going to be mu gas phase under ideal condition, isn't it? But do you know mu G 0? I agree. We can always do it, and then in that case, this becomes P equals to 0. Perfectly agreed. But the problem is, yes, please.
PSAT maybe. Saturated pressure.
We will not guess anything. Okay, possibly for some particular cases you are telling correct. What I like is that means you have gone through certain things and you are aware, but will not jump. We will just see what we can do. Okay, for the time being, see, we have no way of finding out mu G 0. We do not know what will be the mu G for an ideal gas state. Okay. We do not know this, but the problem is if we do not know the lower limit, then we cannot evaluate this. And this tells you the most important thing of thermodynamics. See, I do not know whether you have noticed it or not. If you think right from the beginning of the semesters, the different equations that you were told, or the different equations that have been discussed, if you find out for each and every equations except for this was just a summation of property group. Other than this, if you find whatever equations that has been discussed with you, whatever new properties have been derived for you, you will find for every single thing we had defined the differential of the properties. In nowhere in thermodynamics except this equation have we defined the absolute value of the property. Am I clear to you? If you find all sorts of properties that we have defined, all sorts of properties we have defined by means of equations, all these equations, they relate d of the property to d of something. There are no equations which relate the absolute value of the property to the absolute value of something. And that is where thermodynamics, phase equilibrium thermodynamics is problematic, because every time we have to find out any absolute value of the property, we need to know the value of the property at some lower level of the integral. And this is the case why we had to introduce the concept of fugacity. We found out that we can always write this down as d mu equals to VdP. For an ideal gas, we can write this down as RT by P dP, right? And then it was felt, or in other words, this is RT dln P. Then it was felt that we know d mu 0. Again, we do not know mu 0. Mind it. We know that mu 0 variation in the ideal gas state that can be related with pressure. Right? So therefore, if we know some pressure value and some other pressure value, we can find the difference of the mu in the ideal gas state. So accordingly, looking at this equation, it was felt that if we can, just like P, if we can define a term fugacity, then in that case, what do? We can tell that we will always start from one particular state, we will go at the other state, but we will be defining it such that fugacity is known at least at one particular state. And at what state do we know fugacity? We know fugacity at P equals to 0. We know fugacity that is equal to P. This is what we know. So therefore, it was felt that since we do not have any way of connecting mu 0 to any other parameter, we have a way of connecting d mu 0 to the to pressure, but not any way of connecting mu 0. So therefore, what we do that in just this particular equation for the ideal gas state, we simply rewrite the same equation. We simply replace P with F, and in that case, this F is applicable for everything. This particular equation, it is valid for liquid, solid, gas, pure, mixture, ideal, non-ideal. For every single thing under the sky, this particular equation is applicable. Only how we'll define F, that is going to matter whether it is an ideal case. If it's an ideal gas, F equals to P. Okay. If it is a pure ideal gas, F equals to P. If it is a component I in a mixture of ideal gases, then this becomes equal to the partial pressure. If it is a pure liquid, it has already been derived for you. At low pressures, it becomes saturated pressure. Fine. When it's not at all ideal, F is equal to F. But we have a way of calculating F under some particular limiting conditions. And that is the primary reason why this particular P was replaced with F and mu was defined in terms of F. Am I clear to all of you? Is the concept of fugacity now clear for all of you? So therefore, come on, tell me something, Baba.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this concept clear? Why at all you wanted this? But now I have to hurry because I have to come to the point which was your actual question. So therefore, we found out that these two equations, they were written down. Whenever you are calculating anything concerning two phases in equilibrium, this part you do not need. In fact, mu you do not need if there is only a single phase, right? Whenever you are calculating two phases are there in equilibrium, not in equilibrium, whether there will be mass transfer, just in order to decide that, you need to calculate mu. Mu is a property of every phase, but it has relevance whenever it is interacting with some other phase. Otherwise, there is no point of mu, right? And whenever such a situation is there, under that condition, you can write down this particular equation. And then what do you know? You know from P equals to 0 to P, if you know the PVT behavior of the gases, and provided you have to remember right from 0 to P, the same equation has to be valid. If it is not valid, then this has to be broken down into a number of integrals, say P1, then P1 to P2, etc. And for each case, V minus RT by P has to be done. Just similarly, the way that you have done it for the case of a liquid, right? And this one, you know, this one you are going to integrate from F by P equals to 1 to F by P, as a result of which you finally get that d mu this again you integrate from mu minus mu 0 equals to 1 to mu minus mu 0. So therefore finally in this case you get mu minus mu 0 equals to RT ln F by P equals to integral 0 to P V minus RT by P dP. Now, in this case, when you want to evaluate F, you have already seen that you will be using this part of the equation, right? Now, F was defined just for equilibrium considerations. Otherwise, this would not have come. So moment you have defined F, you know how to find out F. This is the combination that you will be using. If you have some other data, then please go through the videos properly. If you have enthalpy data, then accordingly you have to calculate F. But before we do anything, it is important to define equilibrium in terms of F. And this is where the question was, right? Now, in order to answer the question, again, I start from a liquid and a vapor. Let me start from a single component system. Agreed? Now, for this particular single component system in two phases, what do I know? I know mu V is equal to mu L. Yes or no? Come on. I know this?
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect. Now for mu V, how to find it out? D mu V, this is equals to RT D ln FV. Isn't it? I'll first remove this particular part. This is the equation that I have. Fine. Same way I have D mu L equals to RT D ln FL. Agreed. Now let me see, there is one thing, moment I start integrating these, one thing you have to remember, the limits of integration on the left and right hand side have to be the same. This is one thing that you need to remember, right? So therefore, when I'm integrating this, then say I've started integrating from say any particular state 1 to any particular state 2, where I know the situation in state 1 and I need to find out the situation in state 2. So in this case, what do I write? Or in other words, I can let me do it in this particular way. So therefore, this gives you mu 2 minus mu 1. This particular state, it is a standard state, right? This is RT ln F2 by F1. Whole thing is for V. So therefore, this is mu 2V, mu 1V, F2V, F1V. Same way from here I can do. Here again I start from one particular state. Now the state where I start from here, that can be the same state here. It cannot be the same state here. Suppose I start from the same state 1, I go to the state 2. Start from the same state 1, I go to the state 2. Then in that case, what do I get? I get the lower limit here and the lower limit here are the same. Or in other words, mu 2L minus say mu 1L. This is equals to RT ln F2L by F1L. Anybody, any doubts in this particular thing that I have written down? Now what I had assumed, I had assumed that the standard states for both are the same. If the standard states of both are the same, which means mu1v and mu1l, they are the same, right? Now remember one thing, standard state here and standard state here are the same. So it automatically implies that this and this are also equal. If the two phases are in equilibrium, then mu v equals to mu l. Or in other words, this and this are also the same. So from here, don't I get that f in this particular, whatever state 2 is equal to f in state 1? Is this part clear to all of you? This was derived when the standard state taken for the vapor phase and the liquid phase are the same. Say for both the cases, I take, say, P, we start from P equals to 0 or whatever it is. Some particular standard state which is known for both of them. So therefore, we start from that particular standard state and we go to the state of interest. Now, this and this states, then they are same. Now, whenever we integrate, I've told you that the right hand and the left hand side have to start from the same states. So which automatically implies then that this state and this state are equal, I've assumed, and this state has to be same as this state. This state has to be same as this state. So automatically we know that F2L has to be equal to F2V. Is this part clear to you? Now suppose I assume that, well, I'll not take the same standard states in the two cases. Okay, I'll take different standard states. Agreed, we can also do that. So for the vapor phase, say I take mu0v to some particular state v. Naturally, this is RTDLN FV. This also goes to F0V to some particular state FV. Just remember one thing, that F0V and mu0V had to be at the same standard state, which means at same temperature and pressure, right? Same way for the liquid phase, this is going to be RTDLNFL. We start from mu0L to mu-L. Here also F0L to FL I start. And here also I can tell you F0L and mu0L at same T and P. But in this case, F0V and F0L not at same P, but they have to be at same T because I am doing everything under constant temperature. So therefore, at max, I can assume that, well, for my case, I do not assume both of them will be at the same pressure. They will be at a different pressure. No harm, they are at a different pressure, but they correspond to the same component. If they are at a different pressure and they correspond to the same component, then for that particular case, can I write down something like, just try to listen to it carefully. D mu 0, D mu, say they are the different pressure but the same temperature. So therefore, for that particular case, I can write it down as D mu 0 equals to RT D ln F0. This, suppose I integrate it, say from mu 0 L to mu 0 V. This will also has to be integrated from F0 L to F0 V. Can I do this? Yes or no? Because I find mu0 and mu0 L and mu0 V, they are both, their difference is by pressure. There is nothing else difference between the two. So therefore, I can very well connect from mu 0 L to mu 0 V, I can sense all of these are properties. So I can very well write down this equation, which gives me mu 0 V minus mu 0 L equals to RT ln F0 V by F0 L. Now in the original equation that you had, in this particular original equation, now if you subtract and if you put this, I'll just do it for you just to show you that what was the original equation. The original equation which you had was mu L minus mu 0 L. This is equals to RT ln FL minus RT ln F0L. For the vapor state, it was mu L equals to mu V, right? This you know. You also know that mu 0 V minus mu 0 L, that can be replaced by RT ln this particular thing. Now, moment you replace this, this becomes minus RT ln F0 L by F0 sorry, yeah, minus RT ln F0 L by F0 L by F0 V. This gives you RT ln FL by FV. And this is again minus RT ln F0 L by F0 V. So therefore these two cancels out, and in this particular case also you get F of component in liquid phase equals to F of component in the vapor phase. We have proved this for same standard states in liquid vapor, different standard states in liquid vapor. We have proved it for one component system. Same thing can be done for multi-component systems as well. The same logic is going to hold true in this case also. In this particular case, we will just mention that F0V and F0L, they may not be at the same pressure and they may not be at the same composition as well. The compositions, one can be pure state, one can be in some other composition. It hardly matters. Whatever be the condition, we will know that this equation is going to hold, and moment this equation is going to hold, irrespective of the standard states of the vapor and the liquid phase, this particular equation is going to hold. Tell me one thing if this part is clear. If you need any further clarifications, we can do it after the test tomorrow. But tell me if you need some small clarifications, I can do it just now itself. See, the only crutch of the whole thing is you have to be very, very careful when you are dealing with such things regarding the limits of integral. The limits of integral, if you are clear, then in that case, your life becomes much more simpler. Certain things which you already know, no point in mentioning, that is for any particular equation, the limits of the left hand and right hand side are the same. If you are using two different equations, and in the equations, if one of the limits are the same, that means one state is same for the two. If these two limits are different, then in that case, you cannot directly equate these two. But there will be some equations relating the two. And that is the equation which I have written down. This comes from the basic defining equation which I had already written down. The basic defining equation for fugacity is nothing but this particular equation. So the relationship between mu and F is always in this form, and no matter whatever be the limits here, if we go from the same state to the same state, this equation is going to relate us. So the point is that when you try to find out fugacity, we use this part. When we try to find out some equilibrium considerations with this part of the equation. And this tells us the reason why we have replaced mu with fugacity, why it is more convenient to deal with fugacity as compared to mu. The differences will be more clear when we deal with, instead of one component, multi-component systems in equilibrium in two phases. It can be vapor liquid, liquid liquid, liquid solid, vapor solid, anything. Am I clear to all of you? So I think this completes our revision part. There is just one particular half an hour lecture on partial molar property estimation, which will not be there in tomorrow's test. That will be run by Pallavi on Friday. And after that, we go ahead. Once we have understood liquid mixtures, we have understood vapor mixtures, then we will be dealing with liquid and vapor together. We will find out that partial molar properties, it's not very easy to find out. So like every situation as engineers do, we will try to find out an idealization, which is known as a ideal liquid solution. Then we will deal with ideal liquid solution. We'll find under what conditions any particular liquid mixture obeys the ideal liquid solution. For that, equations will be much simpler. Then there'll be cases where the solutions will not be obeying ideal liquid solutions. This is the most common case. And for that, what are the corrections that we will be doing, we'll be dealing, and that will be the end of your vapor liquid phase equilibrium. So till today, whatever has been taught, except one particular half an hour lecture on partial molar properties, everything else has been covered regarding pure liquid, pure vapor, liquid mixtures, and your gaseous mixtures, and also the basic concepts of equilibrium, Gibbs-Duhem equation, the Gibbs phase rule, and also the Gibbs phase rule, and the expression of equilibrium in terms of extensive and intensive variables. So till this much, anybody, any doubts, anything, or else we end the class today. In fact, I have already exceeded my time. So now I believe you are happy that you will be having the test tomorrow. Any other queries?
No, ma'am.
So therefore in that, yes, please.
I mean, no, ma'am. No
Fine.
doubt.
No doubt. Fine. So therefore tomorrow come prepared with the calculators, etc. I let me see, it will be a 50 minutes or something test. And then on Friday we continue. There's a small portion of partial molar properties, and then we go ahead. Today I am going to upload the second set of assignments, which you will be you can go through them today, and you will have to submit them on Sunday by midnight. And the solutions will be uploaded on Monday itself. So thank you all.
Thank you, ma'am.
Fine. You can leave now.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
We meet tomorrow again.